Discover the amazing power of silence. 7 transformative steps to uncover your hidden voice. As Sarah scrubbed away plaque from yet another patient's teeth, a hollow ache pulsed in her chest. She felt more like a machine than a person each day, a blur of rinses and positional adjustments, with little time for herself. "You're just a dental hygienist," she whispered inside her mind, battling the jagged feelings of inadequacy. Raising 2 teenage daughters alone felt like trying to carry a whole world on her weary shoulders. Moments of joy were fleeting, obscured by ever-growing responsibilities. Days passed, and her own dreams of becoming an artist, the strokes of color and creativity that had once filled her soul, were supplanted by teeth-cleaning tools and daily routines. And the quiet corners of her home, where art supplies lay dormant, memories of her late mother lingered like a soft whisper. "Art is your voice, sweetheart," she had always said. The pain of her mother's absence made Sarah push the art aside, burying her aspirations deep within the sadness. But as her eldest daughter, Lily, faced relentless bullying at school, a wave of urgency washed over Sarah. She could no longer stand by, watching her daughter wilt beneath the weight of cruelty. It ignited something inside her. Were her dreams truly lost, or merely silent? The decision hit her like a bolt of lightning. With trembling hands and a racing heart, Sarah signed up for the local art competition. It felt like reclaiming a self that had been silenced for so long. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Was she just a mother, or could she also be an artist? Friends began to murmur, their voices casting shadows on her enthusiasm. "It's selfish to invest time in this," they said. Each remark felt like a jab, questioning her choices. But alongside those doubts sprouted defiance, a flicker of determination. Days turned into weeks as Sarah juggled her job and family with art supplies sprawled across the dining table. Brief moments spent sketching became her refuge, yet guilt layered itself atop every stroke. How could parenting and personal ambition coexist? She wished for support but worried about burdening her daughters with her longings. The pressure mounted, and she often found herself questioning whether this endeavor was worth the strain it placed on their already frazzled lives. Then, just as Sarah began finding her rhythm, the doubt bubbled up anew. While working late at the library, she met James, an elderly artist who spotted her sketches. "You have talent, Sarah," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. Those words resonated, yet still, the judgments from her friends echoed louder. "You're letting your daughters down," they echoed in her mind, the ache palpable with each brush stroke she attempted. Sweat broke on her brow as she hesitated before canvas after canvas, fearing the spotlight that would soon be cast upon her. The most gut-wrenching moment came when Lily finally stood up for herself at school. Humbled, Sarah watched as her daughter reclaimed her voice, emboldened by her mother's journey. Yet, even amidst pride, a whisper of doubt seeped in. Could she truly live up to that same courage? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The competition day loomed, heavy with anticipation. Will my art speak as my heart desires? The piece she planned to unveil was entwined not just with her own struggles, but with the story of their shared silence. As she stood in front of the canvas, the air thickened. Would her vulnerability be embraced or mocked? Locked in a moment brimming with fear, everything felt poised to shift. Here, on the brink of revelation, both for herself and her daughters, the outcome dangled precariously, an unturned page waiting to narrate the next chapter of their lives. The gallery buzzed with murmurs and the clinking of glasses, a cacophony that seemed to mirror the storm within Sarah. She stood before her canvas, a vibrant expanse of colors and shapes, representing her journey, a tumultuous blend of self-doubt and courageous expression. Every brushstroke had been infused with layers of her life, each revealing a flicker of her long-buried identity. Yet standing here, she felt exposed, raw, her vulnerability on display for all to see. A knot twisted in her stomach as glances flitted toward her piece. Confronted by the expectations of the crowd, she recalled every judgment that had echoed in her mind, amplified by her insecurities. Would they appreciate her work, or would they chastise what they deemed selfish? As the minutes ticked on, she could feel her heart thumping. It felt as though it could break free from her chest. Each second stretched agonizingly long, pulling her focus inward as a flood of reminders raced through her thoughts: the doubters, the critics, her own internal battles. Would it all have been for nothing? With every deep breath, she reminded herself of Lily's triumphant moment at school, how her daughter had gathered strength and faced down her bullies. Sarah remembered the glint in her daughter's eyes, that fierce determination that ignited a whisper of hope in her own heart. It was a turning point, a moment of empowerment that echoed the very essence of why she fought for her art. In that instant, her perspective shifted. This competition wasn't merely about her. It was an acknowledgement of the silent struggles they both endured. Sarah took a step forward, breathing in the life of her art, recognizing it as an extension of her voice, a patchwork of their shared experiences stitched together in vivid colors. As the crowd continued to buzz, she felt an unfamiliar steadiness wash over her. What mattered was not the judgment of others, but the courage it took to put herself out there. This is my truth, she thought fiercely, and with it came the realization that she was an artist irrespective of the outcome. The announcements began, an air of nervous excitement threading through the gallery. Sarah's heart raced again as her name echoed through the room. And the artist for our audience's favorite is. She held her breath, praying for triumph but bracing herself for acceptance, whatever that might look like. When her name rang out, words swirling around the hall, her eyes widened in disbelief. The room erupted into applause, but within her, a quiet realization unfurled: perhaps this wasn't just about winning. It was about silencing the fears that had long tethered her. As she stepped forward, accepting the recognition with a mixture of surprise and elation, she noticed James cheering from the back, a proud smile illuminating his aged face. His conviction in her talent had not just bolstered her desire to create, it had become a tonic for her soul. Returning home that night, the weight of her fears lightened. Sarah was greeted with an unexpected warmth from Lily and her younger daughter, Mia. "We heard about it, Mom," Lily exclaimed, eyes sparkling. "We're so proud of you." The love pouring from her daughters felt like a balm for her weary spirit. Yet as they embraced, a new question surfaced in Sarah's mind. How could her journey of artistic discovery transform into a shared experience that could inspire both of her daughters? Determined to nurture not only her passion but to ignite creativity within her children, she began sketching a plan in her mind. But first, there was a lingering fear, a denial of the past that still held her back. The laughter of her daughters faded into the background. Shouldering her new identity forced her to confront something deeper. As she reflected on her journey that evening, she realized there was still one more silent voice that nestled within her, one that had yet to emerge. Could she dig deeper and face the remnants of her past hovering just out of reach? This newfound awareness settled around her like a thick fog, and she knew that embracing all parts of her journey would redefine not only her path as an artist but her role as a mother. Would she summon the courage to dive into these uncharted waters? And what revelations awaited her on the other side? The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of the night's celebrations, smeared with confetti from Mia's science project. Sarah stood at the counter, a steaming cup in hand, reflecting on the whirlwind of emotions still swirling within her. Every cheer from the gallery echoed in her mind, a sweet reminder of her recent victory. Yet that lingering fog beckoned her into deeper contemplation, a challenge, almost taunting her to confront the uncharted territories of her past. Mornings with her daughters usually brought joy, filled with laughter and the repetitive din of cereal bowls clattering against one another. Today, however, they seemed to serve as a canvas for her thoughts. As Lily and Mia chirped about their upcoming school events, Sarah's attention drifted further inward. What, exactly, was it about her past that held such sway over her present? The lingering apprehension nudged at her, demanding to be addressed. With art providing clarity and liberation, the question loomed. How could she forge a new path, not just for herself, but as a guide through the creative gates for Lily and Mia. That was no small task, and she could not ignore the shadowy hints of self-doubt lingering at the edges of her ambitions. After breakfast, Sarah gathered her daughters at the kitchen table. She could see their carefree spirits, contrasting starkly with the tumult inside her. "What if we try a project together?" she suggested tentatively, an undercurrent of vulnerability in her voice. "Something artistic?" Lily's eyes sparkled, while Mia jumped in delight. "Can we paint?" Mia cried, her enthusiasm contagious. Sarah's heart quickened. She could feel an ember of excitement flare up, but would allowing her daughters to paint alongside her unearth the buried fragments of her past or offer a fresh start? They gathered their supplies and set up in the backyard, a makeshift studio under the sprawling oak tree. As Sarah squeezed vibrant tubes of paint onto their palettes, she realized this was a reckoning and opportunity to nurture not only artistic expression but also emotional honesty. The three began to paint, their laughter intermingling with the chirping of crickets and the rustling leaves. Yet, with brush in hand, Sarah's mind flickered back to moments in her childhood, those fraught with judgment and fear, where art became a shield to hide behind rather than a voice to project. Would her daughters be spared such burdens? Or would she inadvertently pass them down? "Mom, can you help us with faces?" Lily asked, pulling Sarah from her reverie. The request pulled at her as she remembered a time when she had shied away from drawing people. They felt too full of emotion. Yet with each stroke she made, something began to shift. She chose not to brush aside the memories but to channel the unresolved into the paint. This project would not only embellish the canvas before them but was a recompense for a silenced voice within her. The realization struck her. The process of creating art was far more significant than its outcome. Her approach transformed from merely teaching her daughters how to paint to engaging them in the act of self-discovery. With every guided stroke, she infused them with the courage to express their fears, joys, and vulnerabilities, elements she wished she had embraced herself at their age. Hours melted away as they painted, a kaleidoscope of colors blossoming across their canvases. Laughter erupted, softer moments blossomed into heartfelt discussions about dreams and insecurities, and with every word, Sarah could feel older wounds start to heal. Yet amid this burst of collaborative creativity, a question simmered beneath her consciousness. If she stepped fully into this role, a mentor, a guide, a transformed artist, would she risk plunging deeply into the memories she strove to confront? What truths might arise from that exploration? As dusk settled and the final touches were added to their masterpieces, the paintings became more than mere images. They transformed into collective affirmations of their stories, a promise of support intertwined in vivid colors. But as they admired their work, Sarah felt a twinge of unresolved fear creeping back in. Was she merely covering up the real challenge awaiting her? Determined to face whatever lay ahead, Sarah sensed a pivotal moment around the corner. The quiet call of her past demanded she listen. Would she dare to plunge into that silence and uncover the hidden aspects of her identity? The ground was shifting, and the next step might very well redefine everything. The following morning, Sarah woke up to a sharper clarity, a crispness in the air that felt almost electric. The chaos of the previous day had simmered down, leaving her with a resolve that chased away the lingering fog of self-doubt. Today was not just any day. It was an invitation to confront the tangled threads of her past, a necessary but daunting prospect. With her daughters still dreaming, she slipped outdoors, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, its warmth seeping into her palms as she sat on the porch, gazing at the wet dew glistening on the grass. Her thoughts swirled around her newfound commitment. She recalled snippets of her past and art fair when she was a teenager, filled with beaming smiles and ambitious dreams. And yet, an undercurrent of failure as she stood rejected, clutching a paintbrush and a canvas dropped in the reality of criticism. Those moments haunted her now, shadowing any time she attempted to showcase her work or share her creativity. But no more. Today, she would challenge those memories. With that thought igniting a fire in her, Sarah decided that she wouldn't wait for the perfect moment. She would create one. She would arrange an open session at the local art studio for anyone interested in exploring their creativity, a space she could transform into a safe haven free from judgment. After securing the space and picking a date, she became acutely aware of apprehension bubbling beneath her enthusiasm. Would anyone actually show up? Could she, after all these years of hesitation, facilitate such a gathering? The ever-present question of her own worthiness began to gnaw at her, and that nagging fear began to fester again. Yet, she found herself taking a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Over the next few days, she poured her energy into preparing for the session. She crafted a flyer, filled with encouraging words about self-exploration through art, and plastered them around town, each one a small act of defiance against her insecurities. During this flurry of activity, Sarah began to realize her daughters were watching closely. "Are you nervous about the art session?" Mia inquired one evening as they sorted paintbrushes and colors. "Maybe a little," Sarah admitted, her heart racing. "But it's more exciting than anything." "Why?" Lily asked, her candor piercing through Sarah's armor of adult composure. It struck Sarah then that her daughters needed to see her face challenges head-on, to understand that vulnerability didn't equate to weakness. "Because it's a chance to help others find their voice, just as I am trying to find mine," she answered, the sincerity in her voice surprising even herself. For the first time, the enormity of her endeavor didn't overwhelm her but rather sparked determination. The day of the session dawned, bright but chilly. Sarah paced around the studio, her heart thumping in rhythm with the ticking clock. Each fleeting second felt like a countdown to a confrontation both thrilling and terrifying. As participants shuffled in various phases of ages and backgrounds, time seemed to stretch, allowing her to study them. The apprehension she had on the porch transformed into solidarity. Each one carried their own baggage, their own fears, similar to the ones she had previously hidden away. As she welcomed them, she felt the weight of her past begin to lift. Sarah introduced herself and shared a part of her journey, words spilling out with a raw honesty that enveloped the room in a warm embrace, stoking the embers of connection. No longer just the facilitator, she was part of a story unfolding in real time, imbued with the authenticity that came from vulnerability. The session blossomed into laughter and shared stories, with paint splattering across canvas, emotional walls crumbling. Sarah felt herself reflected in each participant's glances, a mosaic of shared insecurities transforming into a collective strength. However, amidst the creativity flowing around, a single thought flickered incessantly within her mind. What if they wanted to go deeper? What if they wanted to confront their own pasts? Would she be ready to guide them through those murky waters when she was still navigating her own? As the session came to a close, a sense of fulfillment washed over her, but the question lingered, casting shadows over her triumph. Would this be enough to truly lead others out of their struggles? Or was she still crafting her own path through silence? This moment felt pivotal yet incomplete. Unbeknownst to Sarah, the true confrontation with her past loomed ahead, tinged with promises of both discovery and potential heartbreak. Would she summon the courage to delve deeper, with her newfound community at her side? The next step awaited, laden with both fear and possibility. As the last participant packed up their brushes, the studio felt charged with a residual warmth, a manifestation of the connections forged just moments ago. Sarah stood at the center of the room, taking in the remnants of creativity, the splattered paint on the floor, the half-finished canvases, and the various expressions that had once hidden behind the masks of uncertainty. She realized that, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she could breathe, but satisfaction was quickly overshadowed by the pressing question lingering in her mind. Could a single session truly be enough to encourage others to unearth the depths of their own experiences? What if peeling back those layers revealed wounds too painful to bear? The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak, and she could feel the familiar stirrings of doubt rising to the surface. She was struck by the thought that she had created a space for expression but unwittingly lifted the illusion of control in the process. Would they look to her for guidance, expecting solutions to their battles that she herself grappled with? As participants trickled out, their thank yous and smiles momentarily dulled her concerns. Yet in the quiet room, disquiet stirred within her. The silence pressed on her. How long could she navigate her own unearthing without a plan? She recalled the faces eager to dive deeper into their downfalls, and suddenly, their vulnerability felt like a mirror reflecting her own. It was an unsettling realization her past was no longer hers alone. Every story shared that day had intertwined with her own, transformed into a collective thread of resilience. Determined to honor that unspoken bond, Sarah approached the canvas at the front, still ripe with untouched space. She picked up a brush, her hand poised over the white expanse. Would she dare to express what lingered unvoiced within? What if she simply explored the concept of silence itself, the very trilogy of fear, shame, and strength that structured her interactions with art? Color spilled onto the canvas as Sarah allowed movement to guide her, capturing feelings in strokes that represented whispers of her journey. It blossomed into a chaotic, yet strangely harmonious abstract, a cacophony of reds and blues contrasting sharply with gentle whites. Each layer became a declaration of her existence, a refusal to shrink back in the face of fear. Yet, as she worked, thoughts of her daughters hovered in the periphery of her consciousness. They were impressionable vessels. Would they inherit her fears or her courage? The fear of failure gnawed at her, a worried parent questioning the path she had chosen. She wished to shield them from hurt, but at what cost? Hiding her struggles might lead them to believe that vulnerability was something to be avoided instead of embraced. With the canvas complete, exhaustion weighed heavy in her bones, but resolve surged anew. Perhaps another session was needed, a deeper exploration into the heart of silence and strength that had both haunted and guided her. This time, the walls could echo more than mere laughter. Real dialogue might rise from the ashes of creativity and honesty. She imagined participants sharing stories of their own, an invitation to leave their comfort zones and confront the heartache nestled within. But would they? Would she be able to guide them into those depths when she was still uncertain about venturing there herself? With her hands sticky from paint and her mind whirling with possibilities, clarity bloomed around her. The power to unlock this journey could start with her. It would demand courage, authenticity, and perhaps the willingness to face collective fears head-on. As she cleaned her brushes, Sarah knew the next step was more than planning. It was about stepping into the unknown alongside others. Could she lead her small gathering of artists into the depths that had eluded her for so long? The question stood, unresolved but prominent. The moment loomed ahead, ripe with potential for both growth and heartbreak, pushing her to confront silence itself. What would the next chapter reveal as they stood at the precipice of deeper discovery? Had they truly found their voices? Or would they plunge into the shadows of their past to emerge transformed? The morning light filtered through the studio windows, illuminating the specks of dust that danced in the air. Sarah took a deep breath, determined to approach the next session without the shadow of self-doubt cloaking her. The echoes of laughter and shared stories from yesterday had sparked something ignitable within her, a flicker of hope, tempered by the reality of her own vulnerabilities. As she arranged chairs in a circle for the next gathering, she pondered how to structure the session. Should she guide them with a loose plan, or would they respond better to openness? The lingering uncertainty tightened her chest, pushing her to question her own capabilities as a mentor. Was she truly equipped to steer others through uncharted emotional territories while often feeling lost herself? The studio transformed into a battleground of conflicting thoughts. One moment, she felt the elation of being a facilitator making a difference. The next, the trepidation of leading through unprocessed pain, a pain she seldom articulated. If she allowed herself to be vulnerable, how would they react? Would they see her as a leader, or would they find her weaknesses alarming? In an impulsive decision, Sarah decided to embrace the chaos of feeling inadequate. Perhaps honesty would serve them all better than the facade of confidence. As participants began to filter in, she noticed their trepidation mirrored her own. Eyes darted, hands fidgeted, and bodies shuffled awkwardly. It was clear they were met with similar fears, the same apprehension of stripping back layers. "Let us talk," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to create a space where we can all feel safe to share, to explore, to be raw. Today's theme is silence, how it shapes us and how we can turn that silence into a powerful voice." As she spoke, Sarah could sense the hesitations ebbing slightly. Encouraged, she set forth the first step. Each of them would put a mark on the canvas representing their silence, something they had yet to express. She handed out brushes, hoping that allowing them to physically interact with their silence would free their voices. As the first person laid color against the canvas, a ripple of courage passed through the room. Sarah felt a jolt of energy. Each mark was a declaration, a testimony to the battles they had fought alone. With every brushstroke, the tension that hung in the air began to lessen, replaced by a tangible sense of collective discovery. She moved around the circle, engaging each artist. Questions bubbled. What does this silence mean to you? What do you wish to say but Haven T? Each response resonated, weaving a tapestry of shared struggles and fears. But internally, Sarah wrestled with her fear of not doing enough. One participant began talking about a recent loss, recounting the pain of silence that had enveloped their family. Listening, Sarah felt the tendrils of that familiar gnawing fear creep back in. What if they expected her to have the answers? What if she fell short? But in that moment of vulnerability, she discovered a wellspring of resilience within herself. Feeling called to share, she gently revealed her own struggle, a recent bout of anxiety that had forced her to confront the silence she often embraced in lieu of communication. The impact was immediate. The group leaned in, listening intently as she unraveled a part of her journey. There was warmth that blossomed, the space suspended between fear and understanding. In her openness, the participants seemed to mirror her bravery, stepping further into their own stories. Together, they ventured deeper into a dialogue of connection and authenticity, creating an undercurrent of empowerment that flowed through the room. As the session drew to a conclusion, Sarah felt exhilarated yet exhausted. They had traversed a difficult emotional landscape, and she sensed that they were all stepping away transformed. Yet, beneath her elation, a new dilemma arose. What would happen when they left this safe space of shared vulnerability? She knew instinctively that she had sparked something that needed nurturing but felt lost on how to maintain those connections moving forward. Could she ensure that this newfound courage flourished outside the sanctuary of their creative identities? With a twinge of trepidation, Sarah began to plan for the future. It was clear that the journey was just beginning, a path not only for her participants but for herself as well. What new challenges awaited as they carried their scars and stories outside these walls? Would the unearthing of their voices withstand the pressure of the world beyond the studio? As the days slipped by, Sarah found herself engulfed in a whirlwind of reflections. Each participant had left a piece of themselves within the studio, and she could feel their stories lingering in the air like echoes of unspoken words. Memories of the session played in her mind, replaying the moments of connection and vulnerability, the raw authenticity that had flourished. Yet the weight of uncertainty sat heavily with her. What would they do next? The thought of her participants struggling alone with those newfound emotions gnawed at her. Sarah envisioned them grappling with the real world, where silence often held them captive instead of empowering their voices. She knew she needed to take proactive steps, to not only support them but also challenge herself to grow along with them. Driven by an impulse to remain connected, she gathered her thoughts and opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she considered starting a blog. Could serve as a platform for her to express insights on navigating silence and sound. Perhaps sharing her experiences would illuminate pathways for others. But even as she drafted her first post, doubt crept in. Was she truly worthy of leading a conversation on such profound topics? Did she have valuable insights to share? With every keystroke, her determination solidified. She wrote extensively about the journey of discovery she and her participants had undertaken, about the urgency and courage it took to confront their own silences. It transformed into an act of defiance against her fears, proving to herself that her voice mattered. As she hit publish, Sarah felt a spark of pride, a sense of ownership over her narrative that she desperately needed. Encouraged by this act, she decided to create a follow-up gathering, one designed not just for discussion but for continued creativity. She envisioned a workshop that would integrate vocal exercises and art, a fusion of expression through both sound and color. Through this, she hoped to remind everyone that silence could be a canvas just waiting to be painted over with their truths. Days before the workshop, anxiety crept back in. What if her plan backfired? What if the participants felt stifled instead of liberated? She considered withdrawing, second-guessing her ability to facilitate this concept. But every time those doubts surfaced, she recalled the warmth of the last session, the way she and her participants had forged connections in vulnerability. One voice had sparked another, and another which meant her workshop could potentially ignite a firestorm of creativity and expression. The night before, she meticulously checked her supplies, paints, canvases, and her carefully chosen prompts for vocalization. Still, a gnawing fear clawed at her insides. Was this too ambitious? Would they feel betrayed if she stepped up, expecting them to leap into the unknown? But she also realized something crucial while staring at her work table. The only way forward was through action. If she faltered now, what message would that send to those who saw her as a guide? At that moment, something shifted within her. She would lead not only through technique but through her continued journey of authenticity and vulnerability. The next day, as she welcomed her participants back into the studio, Sarah felt a cocktail of emotions swirling within her, excitement laced with trepidation. Could she maintain this momentum they had built together? As they settled in, she committed herself to honesty again. Today we dive deeper. Are you ready to venture beyond what we've uncovered? Their eager nods gave her a surge of confidence, igniting a spark of shared purpose. But even as she spoke, she felt a challenge looming ahead. They were all stepping into uncharted waters, and the rawness of true expression came with its own set of risks and rewards. The workshop could either solidify their growth or expose deep-seated fears. But, she reminded herself, every brushstroke was an opportunity to confront silence and unleash their hidden voices. As the first bold splashes of color graced the canvas, she couldn't shake the feeling that change was not only possible, it was imminent. What would arise from this fusion of silence and sound? In that moment of creation, with paint flying and voices lifting, Sarah understood the journey was only just beginning, a path filled with challenges, revelations, and awakening. As she watched them step into their artistic freedom, a question bubbled in her mind, igniting a new wave of curiosity within her. What lies ahead when the silence shatters and the voices are freed? As the workshop unfolded, an electric atmosphere crackled through the studio. Sarah glanced around, absorbing the sights of participants immersed in their expressions, the air thick with vibrant colors and fervent vocalizations. Each brushstroke danced in sync with a rising tide of emotions, and she found herself captivated by the spectrum of creativity blooming before her. Yet, amidst this whirlwind of expression, shadows of doubt lurked just beneath the surface, whispering that she might not be enough to guide them through this powerful experience. With a focused breath, she moved to engage each individual, her mind flitting between the roles of facilitator and fellow artist. Encouragement flowed freely as she approached Jenna, who seemed hesitant, her brush hovering over a blank canvas. "What are you feeling right now, Jenna?" Sarah coaxed gently. "Oh, I don't know. It's just so much," Jenna replied, her voice wavering like the brush in her hand. Sarah felt her heart tighten. This was the moment. Could she help Jenna navigate this overwhelming sea of emotions? Instead of faltering, Sarah took a step closer. "Let us articulate that so much together," she suggested, lowering her voice to resonate warmth and understanding. This wasn't about the artwork alone but the very essence of unlocking their internal truths. As Jenna spoke, hesitant words tumbled forth, morphing into a flow of colors that splashed across the canvas, representing fears that needed expression. Sarah marveled at how one moment of vulnerability opened a channel for creativity. As she moved from one participant to another, Sarah felt their collective voice rise, a harmonious interplay of laughter and exploration amidst the chaos. Each interaction and each leap into vulnerability cemented her belief that they were in the midst of something transformative. But beneath her confidence, a voice questioned if she could continue to lead them effectively. How would they respond when faced with the deeper issues that silence often masks? Just as she was processing this question, Mark, shifting between bold strokes and timid lines, caught her eye. "Sarah, what if we don't find what we're looking for?" he ventured, uncertainty etched across his face. She paused, her heart racing. This was the very doubt she had been wrestling with. What if we find something even more profound? She countered, sensing the weight of the moment. This isn't about an end goal but a journey of expression. Let us embrace the unknown together. Her own words steadied her as much as they steadied him. Determined to press forward, Sarah led them into vocal exercises. They closed their eyes, filling their lungs with deep breaths, allowing sounds to escape without judgment. The studio reverberated with their newfound voices, cries of joy, whispers of pain, and laughter spilling forth like sunlight through a crack, each sound a testament to their growth. Daring to embrace this cacophony of expression, Sarah felt an exhilarating surge within herself. As the hours flew, there were moments of hesitation, of raw authenticity that surfaced. She witnessed tears mingled with paint, shedding layers of silence that many had worn for far too long. Yet, amidst the breakthroughs, Sarah felt an unsettling shift tugging at her, an inkling that once they broke this threshold, there was no going back. She was not just facilitating. She was accompanying them into realms of vulnerability that could disrupt the very fabric of their identities. The day drew to a close, but the atmosphere remained charged, each participant visibly transformed, each one emerging with a newfound resilience. Sarah sighed, mixed emotions flooding her. She realized that her journey as their guide was mirroring their discoveries, and she couldn't ignore the reflections of her own hidden fears. The question loomed larger than ever. What would happen next, when the echoes of their newly liberated voices faded into the silence of reality? As the last splashes of paint dried, a sense of trust blossomed among them. But Sarah felt an undercurrent of tension rise within her. What would it mean to disrupt not just their silences but her own? The journey had only begun, and she sensed challenges ahead that could radically alter their paths. Little did they know. The next step would plunge them deeper into the practice of not only expressing but confronting what lurked beneath their silences. They were ready for the challenge, but was she? Sarah took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever would come next, fueled by the unshakable urge to guide them through the unexpected. What truths awaited just beyond this threshold? And how would they shape not only her participants but her as well? As the new day dawned, a palpable tension threaded through the studio. Sarah stood by the large windows, the morning light filtering through, illuminating the canvases left behind from yesterday's breakthroughs. She felt a mixture of excitement and dread swirling within her. The exhilarating moments of vulnerability had opened doors, but what lay behind those doors? She remembered the faces of her participants, filled with hope yet marred by uncertainty. How could she continue to guide them when her own heart felt heavy with unvoiced fears? Stepping toward the center of the space, she steadied herself, inhaling deeply to absorb the familiar aroma of paint mixed with possibility. The plan for today was to cultivate a deeper exploration into their emotions. The goal was clear. They needed to confront what lay beneath their artistic expression. Would she be able to provoke this self-discovery without feeling overwhelmed herself? Anxiety crept in, threatening to overshadow her courage. She needed to show strength, yet she felt like an imposter on the edge of a precipice. Gather around, she called, her voice ringing out, attempting to infuse the atmosphere with enthusiasm. The group complied, their eyes glinting with curiosity, but Sarah noticed traces of trepidation reflected in their gazes. It was a reminder that vulnerability could be a double-edged sword. Today we're going to dive much deeper, she continued, striving for confidence. We've expressed ourselves, but now it's time to confront what we've held back, the silence that shapes our art and existence. The words rolled off her tongue, but a familiar disquiet gnawed at her conscience. She initiated the first exercise, inviting them to stand in a circle and take turns sharing a truth they had previously kept hidden. As each person spoke, their revelations coalesced into an atmosphere thick with emotion. Jenna shared her fear of not being enough, while Mark admitted to avoiding vulnerability out of deep-seated hurt from past experiences. Each admission left Sarah wrestling within herself. Were these mere shadows, or could they unravel something fundamental about who she was too? Then it was her turn. As her heart raced, a tumult of words piled high within her. Could she exemplify the courage she urged upon them? For a fleeting moment, she hesitated. but the collective energy of the circle anchored her. I sometimes fear that my voice isn't worthy of being heard, she finally confessed, the words tasting bittersweet as they left her lips. The quiet that followed was tangible, a solemn acknowledgement that their shared truths bound them closer. In that moment, something shifted within her. A revelation sparked. By voicing her vulnerability, she wasn't merely acting as their facilitator, she was modeling authenticity and courage, keys to unlocking deeper connections to their true selves. What she didn't foresee was the freeing sensation that accompanied the revelation. A strange liberation from the facade of certainty she had tried to maintain. The group responded with kindness, affirming her openness. The vulnerability became contagious, each confession propelling them further into connection. But as they unraveled layers of silence, another unease crept in for Sarah. Would there be consequences to their newfound honesty? An inner voice whispered that facing hidden truths could be challenging. What if their paths diverged once the workshop concluded? Fueled by this concern, Sarah structured the day's progression to intensify their self-exploration. They transitioned into a somatic experience, tapping into body movements to express their feelings physically. Was she pushing them too hard? Perhaps, but she sensed an urgency. They were standing on the precipice of a profound awakening. As they danced through their emotions, she felt her own rhythm falter. At times, the movements became overwhelming, a reflection of the chaos she felt within. Yet, amidst the disarray of emotions, she realized true growth required vulnerability and discomfort. Perhaps by confronting her own unease head-on, she could empower her participants to delve deeper. By the end of the session, energy pulsed through the studio. They had unearthed unspoken fears, but Sarah recognized a more profound challenge awaited. Their emotional rawness begged for resolution, a responsibility that felt weighty on her shoulders. What if confronting this head-on meant risking the stability they had built together? With the final note of the day reverberating through the air, an unsettling realization settled over her. This journey through silence wouldn't just reshape her participants. It demanded she become her most authentic self. As they gathered their things, excitement crackled in the air, but uncertainty loomed in Sarah's heart. She sensed the next step would require not just facilitation but fortitude. Would she have the strength to navigate the uncharted territories that lay ahead? The hour of truth approached, testing her commitment to both herself and her participants. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning they had all been dancing around, and deep down Sarah knew there would be no turning back. The sun rose boldly, casting vibrant rays across the studio where Sarah had dedicated her heart in the weeks preceding. Today was the day of reckoning. No longer merely a facilitator, Sarah was primed for transformation, the courage to confront silence as a means to unleash authentic voices. She anticipated a powerful journey, yet fear loomed close, its presence creeping under her skin like unwelcome shadows. As participants filed in, their expressions reflected a blend of eagerness and trepidation, mirroring her own internal struggle. Together, they had traversed emotional landscapes filled with creativity and vulnerability, but now they stood on the edge of deeper revelation. Today, we're not just confronting our silences, she began, feeling her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. We're embracing our truths, what we've kept hidden, and finding the strength to express it. Each eye looked to her, questioning yet trusting. She had built a sanctuary for them, an artistic haven, and now it was time to delve deeper into what that space could truly achieve. The first exercise encouraged each participant to take a piece of paper, set their intention, and write their greatest fear, an embodiment of the silence that had shadowed their lives. Sarah took her seat, heart pounding. She completed her assignment too, letting her unfinished fears flourish into words, not being enough. Simultaneously terrifying and liberating, writing felt monumental as they shared their fears aloud. Each whisper unfolded like petals. Jenna's raw acknowledgement of feeling unlovable struck a chord, evoking murmurs of solidarity throughout the circle. Sarah felt emotions ripple, connecting them deeply. Yes, they were unearthing themselves together. When it came to Sarah's turn, acknowledging her shadow felt daunting. She swallowed hard, fought through the urge to retreat, and said, I fear that speaking my truth will create distance from those I love. A sudden silence filled the air, warm yet piercing. She had cast her fear into the light, and its potency transformed into a collective acknowledgement. The day's revelations paved the way for a follow-up exercise and embodiment practice, allowing participants to move freely to their chosen music, expressing their inner rhythms. Even as her heart raced, Sarah took a breath, trusting that this exploration transcended words. The music swelled and flowed, invigorating the studio while invigorating each participant with newfound courage. In the pulsating rhythm, a realization emerged. They were not just connecting artistically but holistically. With every sway and spin, Sarah felt her fears dissipate, replaced by springing inspiration. Participants shared laughter and dance alike. Amidst the joyous chaos, barriers fell away and genuine vulnerability emerged. As Jenna jumped and twirled, her expression became one of unabashed freedom, capturing the essence of reclaiming one's voice. Eventually, the music quieted, and the activity transitioned into collective reflection, a powerful wave of honesty flooding their conversations. They formed a circle, each expressing gratitude for the newfound connections, vibrant with the reality of their shared experiences. As conversations morphed into warmth, binding them solidly together, Sarah looked into their eyes. Beneath her initial trepidation lay a profound sense of accomplishment. Today felt like a purification of her soul. Participants felt free and confident in themselves, just as she had begun to embrace her voice. Yet as the session concluded, new thoughts emerged within Sarah's mind. They had transformed today together, but what now? Would their courage endure once separated from this sanctuary? Determined to maintain the bond cultivated here, she voiced a new idea. Let us create a community beyond these walls online, where we can check in, share our art, and support one another. The thrill of creating a supportive platform ignited enthusiasm, confirming her belief that her journey was not solely about personal expression, but inspiring others toward their. Weeks later, with the online community thriving, Sarah witnessed a vast transformation arise not just in herself, but in every artist linked through unwavering engagement. Each shared triumph, challenge, and piece of art showcased their growth. The quiet fears that once tethered them had driven them to a shared strength, bold, resilient, and utterly alive. On the final day of the community launch, Sarah printed a banner for the studio, a vibrant depiction of her journey. It read, "We are the voice amid the silence." Turning away from her artwork, she paused, a true artist emerging not only through brush and color, but through unwavering self-acceptance. Her days filled with joy and fervor now, Sarah relished in her new identity. With each conversation, message of support, and vibrant canvas, she burgeoned into the artist her mother had believed she could be. As she stood before participants who once felt lost, belonging enveloped her like a warm embrace. Actions had buried the fears, and in their place blossomed achievement. Today, Sarah stood proud not solely as an artist, but as a beacon for her daughters, her community, and herself, solidifying her journey toward individual and shared discovery. This is just the beginning, she mused, her heart alight with an unspoken promise to continue nurturing this newfound authenticity and communal spirit. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that transform lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support these essential narratives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and its profound significance. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion.